Hello everyone and welcome back to my channel on finding your path to your best emotional and physical health. My name is Erin and hopefully you all are starting off for a good week. So if you like what you hear in this series on childhood trauma and complex PTSD, please pass this along to anyone you feel might need it. We want this information to get out as many people as we can. Also, please download my 5 free videos on how to lay the foundation for having your best emotional and physical health. So with that, let's get into today's topic. We're going to talk about some of the foundations of the trauma models, which we're going to get into next. So hang in there for those of you that are waiting for that. We will get to those specific trauma models here pretty quickly. So I wanted to talk to you for a minute about what an internal working model looks like. And this is kind of talks about how the patients or how the people, whoever they are, you or whoever, all of us actually, relate to our external world. And then when we are seeking attachment or when we're facing a threat, we're going to seek attachment, and then we either seek or avoid, and depending on our trauma model. So it's important to know that we all have the urge to connect with someone else when we're kind of faced with a threat or a stressor. So that's why people, are drawn to family members, whether they're healthy or not, or friends, or a therapist, or whoever, right? So based on your internal working model is kind of how you do this, okay? So the question is, because are you going to seek, or are you going to avoid? We're going to talk about a little bit briefly which types tend to do that. And your internal working model is the way you see the world. So if you haven't done so with a therapist or something else, you might want to sit down and think about these questions for a minute. So the very first one is, how do you see yourself? That's the very first one. What's your internal working model of yourself? Do you see yourself as worthy of being loved, worthy of affection, attention, just a worthwhile human being? Do you feel that you have integrity? Are you able to give something to others? All of those things are part of your internal working model. The next one is, of course, how you see others. Okay, and all of these things, these 3 things that we're going to talk about here for a second, are going to help us develop our schemas, our personality style, and also stem from the attachment as we're talking about. So the second one, which is how you see others, is really, do you see them as available, or dangerous, or responsive to our needs? And of course that depends on what we formulated as a kid based on the attachment models. We actually learn how to see ourselves and see others through those attachment models, which we're going to get into in more detail. Then the third is how you see the world in general. Do you see the world as a dangerous place? Is it safe? Is it fair? Now, there's a lot of things that go on that kind of contribute to that, including our internal working models of how we see ourselves and how we see others, where we can kind of continue to see the world in that way, which makes us react to things in the world from that internal working model, which then can kind of create negative situations. So as we start to learn about the different trauma types, we want to learn about how we can kind of change not only that internal working model, but how we relate to our environment so that we can then continue to change the internal working model. So we kind of create that whole system where we can kind of change the way that we interact so that we can change the way how we see things, both ourselves, others, and the world. So in general, when we're talking about the trauma styles and attachment and all those things, if you've been watching some of these other videos, you know that these styles start from birth, and they may even start from when we're in the womb and what's been going on with our parents. Then they also continue to be shaped by experiences throughout our lives. Secure people tend to seek and find support easily during stress or threat. So they have made good connections with other people, they have good friends, they have good family members. So if they've been faced with a stressor or threat in their lives, they seek and then they find those things, and they do well, and they recover, and they engage that attachment system and that support system because they see others as supportive, they see themselves as worthy of support, And while they may not always see the world as fair, they see that the world maybe has a way to be solved. The problems have a way to be solved, that they aren't always permanent, okay? So that's why they seek and they receive that support. Now, anxious attachment styles, and we're going to talk about some of those a little bit later, they are the ones that seek but don't always find maybe a stable support system. So they're the ones that really struggle with, maybe they're worthy, maybe they're not. They see others as maybe unreliable. And the world may be fair sometimes, but not fair at other times. So that's how they kind of view the world. And we're going to get into, again, more detail about some of these things as we go on in more videos. Now, the avoidant types, those are the ones that just avoid everyone because they don't seek that attachment because attachment has been dangerous or extremely unfulfilling. So they see them maybe themselves as unworthy or unloved. And then they see people, like I said, as unreliable or unavailable for them. Or they are afraid they will be unavailable, so they will not seek that connection. And they see the world as usually unfair or sometimes unsafe. So just keep those three in mind as we kind of get into this series of trauma types. And we're actually going to talk about 4 trauma types overall, but these are the 3 main attachment styles. And the 4th one comes from that disorganized attachment style. So we need to think about, as these people seek their needs to be met, their ability to adapt to a threat or a stressor. Those are the ones, if it gets unmet, especially like in the anxious types or something like that, because they don't have good attachment figures, those are the ones that can kind of escalate into this kind of hyperactivation where they're needy and they're constantly trying to get their needs met. They're texting all the time. They may even resort to suicidal threats or threats to leave the relationship in order to kind of get that connection with them. The avoidant types are the opposite. They have deactivation strategies where they're constantly trying to deactivate their attachment system because it in itself is scary. So they tend to isolate, and they can use drugs and alcohol sometimes, and as a form of escapism. They may even resort to self-harm to feel something different. They can often go into denial. They will also often hold themselves together until they explode because they just can't do it all the time. So one must consider what their internal working model is for the world before they can kind of really truly understand what their attachment style is. So take a moment, answer those 3 questions for yourself. How do you see yourself? How do you view others? And how do you see the world around you? And then we can kind of get into some deeper belief systems and how those are affected and created by our attachment styles and how we can possibly treat them in later videos. So with that, I will close up for today. So please join me as we keep going on this series. And if you need some personal coaching on this type of stuff and some ideas about how to move forward with your life and your transformation, please connect with me on the website. Thank you so much and have a great day.